Today's episode is sponsored by Shameless Security. They are a provider of cybersecurity solutions focused on the middle market. They combine human intelligence with technology to secure your investments. Shameless Security works with private equity firms, venture capital organizations, and family offices to identify the technologies and services needed to defend, fortify, and secure their acquisitions' cybersecurity posture. Partnering with Shameless Security enables organizations to close pathways of attack, remediate vulnerabilities, reduce risk while meeting compliance requirements. I've gotten to know Craig Sherwood at Shameless and some of the cyber M&A work they have done, and I'm very impressed. I want to thank them for sponsoring and hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Looking to buy, sell, or grow your business to position it for a sale? As the owner and managing partner of Sun Acquisitions, Domenic Rinaldi has personally been involved in over 300 M&A transactions. He has seen and done it all, consulting with large and small businesses across a broad range of industries. On M&A Unplugged, he'll interview buyers, sellers, and their advisors about their experiences scaling, selling, and acquiring businesses. On every episode, you will get key learnings, but most importantly, you will be better prepared for your own acquisition or sale. This is M&A Unplugged with your host, Domenic Rinaldi.
The American dream of starting, building, and selling a business can be elusive for many entrepreneurs. Anyone who has run a business knows how hard it is to consistently grow a business and reap the monetary rewards of a sale. My guest today, Jay Myers, has realized that dream. Jay was the founder and CEO of Interactive Solutions, a video conferencing audio-visual technology firm with 55 employees headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee. Jay started Interactive from scratch in 1996 and grew it to 20 million with a nationwide client base that included names such as FedEx, AutoZone, International Paper, University of Tennessee, and Fort Knox. ISI, as Interactive was known, was sold in 2018 to the largest AV integration firm in the world, AVI SPL. Jay, welcome to M&A Unplugged community, and so excited to have you share your story with us.
I really appreciate it, Dominic. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, so Jay, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about you and your background and the company, and then we'll get into your story. I'm really so excited to have you tell us about your journey and ultimately selling. And you and I have spent a little time together, and so I know it was a little bit of an emotional roller coaster, and I'm really excited to hear all of that. But let's start with your background and the company.
Well, Dominic, my background, I lived in Memphis a long time, originally from Louisiana, went to high school and college here. And like a lot of people, graduating in the late 70s, went to work for corporate America, sold printing equipment for a few years, then moved to Eastman Kodak and sold copier duplicators, later Hewlett-Packard selling mini computers. And then really my career took a dramatic change for the better when I went to work for a local telecom company that introduced me to video conferencing. And so in 5 years of being what they call the data products manager, we grew 1990 to 1995, me, myself, and I, zero sales to over $5 million with 20 employees, and had a great success, particularly in the distance learning part of the business. Things were going well until my 39th birthday, and then I got fired. And it's a long story, but entrepreneurs have a hard time working for other entrepreneurs, I'll just politely say. But got fired on my 39th birthday and was kind of forced into entrepreneurship, and had a opportunity through some private investors to get funding for Interactive Solutions. So we started out in March of 96. And as you told the story, we've been able to grow the business quite a bit through the years. Dominic, the thing that's kind of interesting about my story is that none of this success has come easy. This company and myself have dealt with all kinds of obstacles. Early on, funding issues, and then later on I bought out my partner. Then a few years later, we dealt with an employee theft and embezzlement, and just a whole series of things during the recession, having to train a whole new group of people and millennials to grow the business. So it's been a real journey. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I believe it's my greatest achievement to own the business growing.
That's awesome. Did you envision before that birthday event that you were going to be an entrepreneur? Did you think you'd always work for corporate America and, you just rise the corporate ladder and then retire at some point?
Dominic, I think I was always one of these kind of guys that was going in a different direction than the corporate folks. I tell friends of mine to this day, when I was working for corporate America, I was always, selling a lot of stuff, successful, but I felt like I didn't really have a career there. I had what I was doing was signing a series of 1-year contracts. And that's not a long-term relationship. I had people through the years, kind of acknowledge my independent streak. I had, when I was working for Eastman Kodak, I remember that one of the guys on our sales team said, man, you don't follow the rules very well. He says, but here's what we're saying, when they're firing live ammo out there, we want you in our foxhole. And it's kind of like, that was kind of like, my trademark. I was just kind of always did things on my own and, always a rebel.
Yeah, got it. And you pointed out what so many people who own a business and run a business know. The people that, fantasize or want to own a business don't quite realize, but owning a business is hard work, sleepless nights. Sometimes you got to figure out where the money's going to come from, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and all sorts of things that you can't even imagine. And it sounds like you were on that roller coaster.
But definitely on the roller coaster. And if I, can think of just a few words or whatever to describe, how we got to this point, resilience, perseverance. I mean, because none of it's come easy. What drives me kind of crazy, thinking about people, I do a lot of mentoring of young entrepreneurs and at the University of Memphis and other places in the local area. And what drives me a little bit crazy is when people talk about they're very entrepreneurial. They have a lot of thoughts. And that's great. And thoughts are wonderful. But if you can't take those and put them into a business plan and execute, you're not an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You're just somebody that's thinking about it. So,
Right.
I take a lot of pride in the, being an entrepreneur. And again, I'm not the smartest guy out there, Dominic. I made C's in college and whatever else, but I believe that was put in a position to have to step up on a number of occasions and have the fortitude to get through a lot of difficult business and personal challenges.
Well, look, congratulations. It is no small feat to grow a business from scratch to $20 million and then realize a sale. So, congratulations on that. But curious, when you first started the business, did you have any thought that you would start it, build it, and sell it? Or did that thought come to you later on?
Dominic, it was kind of interesting. It took us 4 years to really make any money with the business. I mean, and it wasn't a huge amount of money. I never started the business to make money or sell it. I started the business and continued through the years with a great group of employees and team members, started to grow the business more out of a sense of pride of building something out of nothing. And, the funny thing about it was, I think as I look back on it, because I wasn't focused on the money thing or an eventual sale, I think that's why the success was a result of that. We focus on the things about building the business and continue to do that. I wasn't naive to the process, though, by the way. And I know, M&A world that you live in, I certainly was mindful that should we be able to build it up to a certain level, that people are going to be interested in us. And frankly, we got calls through the years, many, many, many calls that 95% of my just pretty much, didn't ignore, but just kind of like, it wouldn't go anywhere. And then this call came through last year. And when you got the biggest company in your industry talking to you and, all the things kind of lined up money-wise and personnel and all these things, it just it made sense.
And just so I have an audience, M&A Unplugged community has a grounding, can you just talk a little bit about the breadth of the services that you provided?
Sure. Yeah. So the company, we sell and install video conferencing and audio visual systems. And that's equipment that would go in anywhere from a conference room to a boardroom to a distance learning classroom. We also do a lot with healthcare, telemedicine, where we can diagnose patients' problems and consults from hundreds of miles away. And more recently, we've really gotten very successful at growing a business, a segment of healthcare, which is simulation labs that a lot of teaching universities are putting in that need audiovisual technology. And these teaching hospitals, rather than having residents working on, quote, live patients, they're actually working on electronic dummies that we're interface with. And it's a big business.
Wow. That sounds really interesting. So when did you know or feel like, we really did build something here and maybe I am ready to sell? Or was it more that the market pulled you to that point? So what I'm really trying to get at is, did you do some advanced planning or did it just present itself at a time where you just said, I'm just going to take advantage of this and we're going to go?
Well, once we turned the corner and started getting some traction, I think that we realized that, and I have a lot of great advisors and sort of an informal board of directors who are coaching me about, if you get the business this level, you're going to have more options. And so as time went on, we kind of recognized that. And we also listen, and I'm a good student of business and things, and I have these great advisors. And, they were also talking about, how you build value in a business, not just selling hardware, but intellectual property and services and things of that nature. So we worked hard on that with the possibility that, it may be marketable business to sell in the future. I will tell you, Dominic, that, we had some sort of introductory things that kind of looked like they were going to step 2 or maybe possibly 3 back in 2011. But I just didn't feel comfortable. This particular company was very focused on our telemedicine efforts and everything and sales. And I felt like that market was going to have some issues going forward in terms of sales revenue and profitability. So we kind of just stepped away from that, didn't go very far. But about 3 years later, got a call from a well thought of business in the industry, recognizable business that had not much bigger than ISI, but they were, again, had a great industry reputation. And we kind of went through the steps with them. In fact, they're based in Indianapolis. We flew up there, my wife and I, to talk to them. They flew to Memphis, swapping a lot of financials, and ended up getting an offer. And was flattered. It was the first one we'd ever gotten in writing. And once we got that offer, my wife and I talked about it, and I think this was about 2014-ish. We just kind of looked at it and said, this is flattering, but this is not life-changing money. And if we're going to do this, it needs to be life-changing, money. So we kind of set on that whole thing and declined the offer, and then just proceeded to continue to grow the business. And fortunately, I did, because the second biggest year we ever had in the history of the company was in 2017. And, for your listeners out there, and I'm sure, you deal with this all day, every day, but you don't want to try to sell your business when it's in the decline. You want to sell it when it's on the ascent.
Absolutely.
And I never dreamed that anybody would come to us again, because I got calls all the time. But this one call came through last summer. And again, I paid attention to it because it's the biggest company in my industry. And I had a thought that, boy, if I don't at least pursue this or acknowledge it, these guys are going to put an office in this area, whether I decide to do this or not. So it's either, kind of listen to this and see what they got, or deal with the consequences. And, it was an arduous process. I will tell you, this all day, every day. That due diligence process is unbelievable.
Yes,
how much information you got to get. And, in our case, I'm running the business, and people, they're looking for all these sophisticated reports and this and that. And it's like, as the owner of the company, I couldn't go out and get that information from my various departments, because you and I both know that would have run up a red flag. So I ended up making my son the bad guy, and he was the CEO in training. So he ended up securing the information, putting the data room and all that.
I want to come back and talk about that. I want to come back and talk about diligence, but let me ask you to get up to the 50,000 foot level for a minute. And looking back, what are the things that you think you did really well to prepare for the moment when AVI came knocking on your door? And what are the things that you think you could have done much better looking back? So let's take the positive side of that first. What are the things you did in preparation that, were like looking back, and whether you planned to do them or not, or knew what the consequences would be, you're looking back going, wow, I'm so glad I did those things. And then we'll come to the other part of that.
That's a great question. So one of the things that we particularly focused on, me and my team members, was making sure, and this is kind of plain vanilla, but keeping the customers happy to the point that we could create recurring revenue through repeat customers. So as time went on, we achieved some, I would say, some pretty gaudy statistics on repeat business. And looking at something like 90+% of our business year over year came from repeat customers.
Wow.
So even though we didn't really have, quote, a recurring revenue base, like if you're in the insurance business or something else, and, stuff, these premiums come in or whatever, this was just keeping the customer happy to where they wanted to continue to do business with us.
Wow. That's awesome.
The second part of the strategy was, we didn't call on Humpty Dumpties. Our client base was the best of the best. And so I think that by not only having repeat business, which was attractive, and we thought about it when we were doing it and everything, but repeat business from Domenic Fortune 500 companies that had a lot of growth opportunities.
Good point. What about things like your financials and your collection cycle and key employees? Like, were there things that you did around those areas that you look back and say, boy, I think we did a really good job of preparing in all of those areas?
Yeah. Well, let me, before I answer that question, answer the second part of your other question, which is what did I feel like we could have done better to position ourselves and everything? I would love to have seen at the time prior to the sale that we had our service contract business at a higher level. We had it at some points at a pretty significant number, but besides repeat business, the service contracts, and particularly at AVI, since they have not been particularly good at selling service, that would have been, I think it could have upped the ante if we'd had a bigger number there. But they were attracted to us because of that. Also because of the fact that, on a positive note, that we had some software and things we had done with remote monitoring of telemedicine cards that they were intrigued with. In terms of the financial part of it, the thing that I just, for your listeners out there, that was just so critical to us is that when they looked at us, our balance sheet was as clean as anyone they'd ever seen. So what does all that mean? I never overcompensated myself, didn't have a lake house charge to the company, any of that kind of stuff. And then on more of a blocking and tackling, nuts and bolts, frankly, we are very tight on receivables. We had absolutely, in 23 years, never wrote off any bad debt.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
It really is. And it's a credit to my it's a credit to my accounts receivable manager more than anything else. And also, I will give myself a small pat on the back, is that she was working for an owner that was highly engaged in the collection process. And in fact, Domenic, I used to have the motto around here is every day I walk in the door, number one, check your ego. Number two, sell something every day and collect money and you can stay in business. And it worked. The last part of the strategy, and I think this is very key to your question and answering your question, is, moment in time, man. It was a moment in time when they came after us. We had just come off the second biggest year in the history of the company. Profitability was very high. But guess what else? The other part of it was our line of credit was zeroed out for several months. So we, again, clean balance sheet. They came in there. We didn't have any lawsuits or any kind of crazy stuff. I ran it the way I kind of, run my life and everything. I'm a Boy Scout and an Eagle Scout, so I kind of kept it very clean and neat and above board.
That's awesome. Boy, you really just gave the M&A Unplugged community several nuggets around recurring revenue, how important that is, and maintaining clean financials. I mean, it's so critical. Talk to me about, did you have key employees in the business?
Yes. I mean, the brains behind the operation, a guy named Derek Plummer, he was my lead engineer, ran the design and engineering department for a number of years. That was attractive to have an employee, long-term employee, 20 plus years of that caliber. And there were several other ones. And I think that you bring up a good point there, Domenic. I think one of the things that also made us attractive to AVI was the fact that I had so many tenured employees. I mean, they were astounded how many people have been with you 10, 15, 20 years. So I feel good about the fact I didn't run them off, and they were providing a high value for a number of years.
And it sounds like you were able to keep the sale from your key employees. Did you have the key employees under employment agreements and non-competes, or did AVI actually talk to those key employees before the sale?
Well, let me answer it this way. We had to be, my son and I kind of agreed that we were both kind of like secret agents last year in the fact of securing this information and putting on flash drives and running around and all this kind of cloak and dagger thing. But again, it was in the best interest of the company. We did not flag any of our, the acquisition and everything in the process. I felt like that was unfair to my employees to have us go through that or have them go through that. But, once we got to the point of the closing, seems like, that was the day that AVI brought all their top executives in, and they had their HR guy go to my key employees to lock down some things, non-compete, et cetera.
And that was day of closing.
That's right. Yeah. Because we did not do it before, because obviously that would have blown it up. And by the way, just an interesting sidebar to your listeners and everything. I guess I'm proud to say that none of my employees knew one thing about this until the day we announced it. So I guess we did a pretty decent job with that.
Yeah, Jay, you bring up a really good point, because typically owners they fit into one camp or the other. There are those that don't want the employees to know anything until the business has been sold. And then there are others that really feel concerned about that. They feel like, these employees have been with them a long time. They should tell them and bring them along with the process and so on and so forth. And, the way you did it, I'm doing this for many years, and the way that you did it is textbook. And for business owners listening out there, the reasons why you don't really want to tell your employees ahead of time is, one, the sale may not happen. Two, they're going to ask you all sorts of questions that you can't answer. For example, am I still going to have a job? And the answer to that is probably likely yes in almost all cases. And is my compensation going to stay the same? Who's the buyer? Is the location going to remain? Like, the list goes on and on and on. And when you can't answer questions for employees emphatically, they get nervous. And when employees get nervous and they have mortgages to pay for, college educations, or whatever it is, they might start looking for other jobs. And if they do that in the midst of you selling your business, I guarantee you the value of your business is going to decline to the point where you might not even be able to sell it. And so, one, there's the aspect of you want to maintain the value of your business, but two, there's the other aspect of just putting yourself in the shoes of your employees and not wanting to make them unduly nervous before there's really even an opportunity to sell.
Yeah. What was driving me, Dominic, and I agree with everything you just said. The other thing for me was I just felt like it was very unfair to put that in front of people. To your point, if the sale didn't happen, then what? But the other part of it was, and I have to make this comment because my employees remember me saying this over and over again, I didn't start my business to make a bunch of money. And I preached to them that I wasn't going to sell it or get out of it for money. And maybe this sounds like, whatever, old fashioned, but what drove me for the sale of the business, although certainly the number was right, and it was, 3 times what we had been offered several years before that. But the biggest thing was I wanted to keep the business going forward, sustainable, and having my employees be exposed to opportunities for career advancement, possibly moving to all kinds of different areas around the world, not just the country, so that they weren't subjected to my own, tight-fisted credit policies and no, line of credit, everything. And they wanted to be around an expanding business, and that they could have career opportunities beyond Memphis and Nashville and our Mid-South footprint. So there was a lot to do with, I felt like that this particular company could offer my employees, frankly, a whole lot of advantages that I couldn't.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's go back and talk about diligence. You made reference to it. We often talk to our clients about how detailed and intrusive this can be. We try to help our clients get ahead of the curve by building out data rooms well in advance of going to the marketplace so that we've got a lot of the information in there. So they're not under the gun to produce it, when there's actually an offer. But talk about your experience. What did you go through? What surprised you? Why was it so difficult? Those sorts of things.
Well, I had never been through it before, obviously. So everything was new to me. And then in looking at it with my son, I knew I needed help. I knew I couldn't do it alone. And, for the diligence, it was just, I think what I was surprised about was the volume of information they were looking for. I was also maybe not quite as surprised about the types of information, whether it be legal documents or contracts or licenses or whatever. But then, Dominic, here's the thing for your listeners to consider. we're talking about activities that went on multiple times a day for over 4 months. And it's very intense and you're trying not to, tip your hand and everything. The other part of it is, and I think this is, again, key to your listeners, is like, I'm still trying to run a business while this is all going on. And I think it was just the volume of information that was required. When I look back on it a year later, I think that what I feel good about is that not only with the sale to AVI, but the fact that they asked for so much information, they were so thorough, they turned us upside down, spun us around, whatever else. There wasn't any seller's remorse or buyer's remorse because they knew everything about us.
In looking back, though, do you think if you were to go through that process again, what would you do differently?
I got to tell you, I don't know that I would have done much different. I will say this much to add to the whole process and everything. What I learned early on is that I could not go this alone. So I had the legal support as well as the accounting support. My accounting firm that had been with me a long time and my attorney had been with me for 20 plus years. They were helpful and kind of give me insights because our attorney specializes in M&A. So she had done a lot of things with it. But yeah, I think that given all the circumstances, man, I don't know that there would have been anything different because all the information they were looking for, we had. There weren't any gotchas or anything like that. Maybe a slight regret is that the timing of it. It was so intense and it was so fast that it kind of took me by surprise. And then the other part of it, Dominic, just on a personal note, I would not recommend this to your listeners, but literally we closed on October 31st. So gave away my baby, or not give it away, but so 4 days before that, I'd walk my daughter down the aisle in Savannah, Georgia. So in
oh my goodness,
less than a week, I let both my babies go. And that was, I would not recommend that. That was, if I had to look back on it, I would have forced them to maybe give me a little more breathing room on the closing.
Wow. Those are two major events happening back to back. Let's talk about that, though. We'll leave the wedding aside. That's not what we're covering here. But talk about, selling your baby. What was that like? What was the emotion like for you? And now you're, a little removed from it. How do you feel today about it?
I got so caught up in the intensity of the due diligence and the closing process. I'm one of these type of people. I tend to have delayed reactions to things because I just kind of get caught up in the moment. And I will say, again, for all your listeners out there, be prepared for this being highly emotional, because at least for me, it really was. It was way more than just a business. It was my career on the line. It was my life's work. I took this very seriously. And I will tell you that one of the things that tipped my in the direction of going ahead and doing the acquisition was when we had dinner with the AVI folks, and the CEO, John Zettel, turned to me after dinner. And, I was telling him how much I was agonizing about this thing and wasn't sure I wanted to do that and all. And he told me that he said, he understood that he had worked alongside the founder of AVI and he understood the emotional thing. And then he looks at me and he said, it's not lost to me that you've entrusted me with your legacy. And that's, God, I had a lump in my throat, and then it kind of hit me. But not being the guy in charge, kind of being, sort of a placeholder for a year has been awkward. But my son and I have worked our way through it. And, it's been a challenging year, a lot of new processes, and there's been some turnover. But, all in all, I'd say pretty doggone good.
So you stayed with the business. And are you transitioning out now? Was it a plan for you to be there for a certain period of time?
Yeah. So, Dominic, we had a contract for a year. So my time's up at the end of this month. And I knew it. And I've got a very generous severance package. So, I knew it was coming. Frankly, I've already started a new business that is not going to compete with AVI. So I'm not that stupid to get into non-compete situations. But I do a lot of public speaking. So I'm going to push that even harder. I'm getting registered with a lot of speakers bureaus, writing a third book, and going to do some small business consulting. So and I think your listeners, for anybody that goes through this, you need to plan on the next step. When it goes through your head about what's next, you need to have a plan. And I think we did a pretty good job of coming out.
And did you have that plan ahead of time? Like, as you were going through the sale process, Was it crystallizing for you as to what you would do next, or did that come after you sold?
I think it did to a degree, Dominic, that because I mean, I've been doing this public speaking stuff. And when I say that, I mean, I've literally been pretty much around the world. I've spoken, in Mexico to all across the country and everything about entrepreneurship and overcoming adversity. And some of the concepts have worked for us at ISI and industry type of events and so on. So, I thought about this honestly, probably over a decade ago. And it wasn't because I was running away from the business. I just had interest in other areas. And I'm really very, very focused on entrepreneurship and inspiring young entrepreneurs in particular to go out and chase the dream. So once we started doing the speaking and then writing a couple of books, it just, and the whole environment of what publishing and some of the opportunities and PR and just it was a fun departure that was part-time, obviously, as I was running ISI. But in the back of my mind, I thought, well, if I ever sell ISI, this is what I'm going to be my full-time job.
Got it. So, we talk about this a lot that, if you're looking to sell the business, it's one of the first questions we ask owners is, what would you do next? Do you have a plan? And if they don't really have a plan on what they're going to do next, we're a little concerned because that's where remorse really can set in. But it sounds to me like you had something, subconscious or not, it was there. It was kind of pulling you. So a transition out, if it was an opportunistic time, made sense.
Absolutely. And frankly, Dominic, I mean, I've even taken the steps. I mean, I'm a guy that's used to going in an office every day. So I've rented some office space near to my home, and we're going to, hang our hat there and move forward with the public speaking, the consulting, and, have some fun, have some flexibility in the schedule. I've got a house about an hour south of Tampa that my wife and I like to go to. So we're going to spend some more time down there. And I've also nurtured relationships with people like the University of Tampa, University of South Florida, spoken entrepreneurship classes, and got a number of friends down there. So we're just going to kind of keep, we're going to make the second act successful and kind of, as my son kids, grow my empire.
Good for you. Yeah, congratulations. That sounds awesome. So it sounds like you're happy with the sale of ISI and you got a plan. You're ready to move forward.
Yeah, I think so, Dominic. I mean, I've been a little bit disheartened about, that in the last year, there's been a few people that have moved on, and that's been kind of, tough, but I understand it.
Of their choosing, Jay?
Yeah. And okay. I mean, frankly, again, to all your listeners out there, some of your employees, you got a small business, medium-sized, whatever you want to call it. Some people just don't want to work for larger companies, and it's nothing personal. It's just not their thing. And, it can, again, that part of the process can be emotional. They had my going away party last week, and I was recalling some, employees and the loyalty and everything. And, it can tend to be tough to see people come and go that have been with you a long time. But, I've always told my employees, whether I like it or not, every job has shelf life. And I said, even mine. So, you got to know when to make the move. But there's still a large group of people that are with the core ISI team that are still here and doing some great things. And I think that, very frankly, a year later, we've been put in a position and set a platform in place with a new office in Nashville and doing some things with the state government. We're in a position now that we've never been in the history of the company, which is, being able to sell state agencies off a state contract that's very lucrative.
That's great. That's awesome. So, we're going to get ready to wrap up here. Probably next to last question. Without mentioning numbers, can you just talk a little bit about the structure of your deal? So, did it consist of cash and an earn-out and consulting, or what were the components of the deal that AVI brought to you?
Well, Dominic, I got to tell you, I'm still pinching myself because the deal was an asset sale. I will tell you that it was, it was a significant number, at least for me. I won't give specific numbers, but, 8 figures or approaching 8 figures. And the best part was the way they were willing to work with me on conditions of the sale. What do I mean by that? The top of the list was I needed them to take care of my employees. I didn't need them to come in and lay off a bunch of people. Tied for number one is that I wanted to make sure that there was a Meyer still running this company, and So my son was brought in as general manager. I said that was a condition of the sale, and had a healthy salary increase. So, they played ball. I mean, I'd like to tell you they were the big bad wolf here or something. They weren't. I mean, they just really, and we made an asset sale. So it was clean and neat. There is no earn out. They didn't feel like that was going to work anyway. And they kind of recognized my personality and he's not going to be the kind of guy that's going to hang around for 3 or 4 years doing earn out. So, they acknowledged my personality and played ball, and it all worked out.
Wow. That's highly unusual that there's no form of an earnout or seller note or some other contingent payments. So good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, hey, last question. You mentioned the book, and you and I had talked a little bit about this. You've written a couple of other books previously, but you've got a third one on the shelf here, I guess. It's in process, and it's about your journey here, correct?
That's correct, Dominic. The working title is called Touching All the Bases, and it's the emotional road for selling my business and lessons learned along the way. I'm a baseball nut, so my first book was titled Keep Swinging. Had a lot to do with this embezzlement thing we went through. Second one was hitting the curveballs and growing the business during the recession. Everything's sort of the theme behind that. So the third one, I just was sticking to my brand, which is touching all the bases. That it made sense as I'm rounding the bases to kind of complete the journey. And then I really feel like one of the hooks and readers that may have an interest in this book, I think it's really fun and an interesting part of it is, very frankly, the emotional road of selling my business and then the lessons learned along the way. I think that anybody out there that ever considers selling their business, do not dismiss the emotional side of this. It's not just money. You got to think about the rest of it.
Yeah, great point. Well, Jay, it's been a pleasure having you here. Congratulations on the sale of the business. Sounds like it was a tremendous outcome for you and for your employees as well. If anybody out there in the M&A Unplugged community wanted to get in touch with you, maybe pick your brain about what you went through or your new business that you're starting, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I've actually got a new email address. It's jay@jaymyers, JAYMYERS, So it's jay@jaymyersceo.com. And then jaymyersceo.com is my book website. They can find all the stuff out about Keep Swinging and Hitting the Curveballs and soon to be Touching All the Bases.
Jay, thank you so much. Really pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Dominic. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
So M&A Unplugged community, really such a pleasure to interview someone like Jay, an entrepreneur who realized the dream. And he really brought up some tremendous points. I'm just going to recap those real quickly here. One was clean financials. Talk about this so often. And it's not just a matter of not putting a lot of discretionary expenses through on your P&L, but it's paying attention to the balance sheet and making sure that the balance sheet really truly reflects the assets and liabilities and equity in the business. Employee contact. I've got a situation right now with a client that's feeling very badly about, not telling employees. And we go through this issue many times. And I can guarantee you, because I've seen the movie so many times, not telling the employees is actually saving them from all of the anxiety that you will go through in the sale process, but you're the one mostly benefiting. And so why put them through that process when in some cases the business might not sell? So you might have done that prematurely. Diligence, not underestimating how long and intrusive diligence can be. Jay recommended, I think very wisely, having really good advisors by your side, an attorney that knows M&A transactions, accountants that are really good that can, take a lot of that heat and pressure off you as it relates to the financial part of the diligence process. And then last but not least was Jay had something that was pulling him out of the business. Whether it was actively pulling him or not, it doesn't matter, but there was something for him to go to. And if you don't have that as an owner, you really need to take stock in what you'll do after the sale. Otherwise, you'll wind up with significant remorse, maybe not on a financial perspective, but certainly on an emotional perspective. And we spend a lot of time talking to clients about whether or not they're really ready emotionally to step away. And so can't ignore that. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and all the information will be available in the show notes. If you would like to learn more about the process of acquiring or selling a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com, or feel free to reach out to me at drinaldi@sunacquisitions.com. I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the M&A Unplugged podcast. And until then, please remember that scaling, acquiring, or selling a business takes time, preparation, and the proper knowledge.
Thank you for joining us today on M&A Unplugged. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and recommend it wherever you get your podcasts. If you want more great information on how to scale, acquire, or sell a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com.